Okay, hi once again. This is my fourth vlog this evening. Wow. Okay, this goes alongside my predictions that I've done for the Saturn Pluto conjunction in Capricorn, which is happening this month. Now, we haven't had a Saturn Pluto conjunction in Capricorn. We have had Saturn Pluto conjunctions, but not one in Capricorn and since the time of Martin Luther, which is way back 400 years ago. And if you guys are new to my channel, I'll just alert you to the excellent vlog I did on the Saturn Pluto conjunction. I did two of them back at the beginning of 2018, and they are just as relevant now. I sort of thought ahead, and I did them because there's so much interesting I had to say about it. And I must say, out of all my vlogs, those two, plus my one called Why Capitalists Love Communism, are my most polished and the ones I'm most proud of. And I think there was a wealth of information in there which was quite interesting. So just to slightly recap, one of the things I talked about in the Saturn-Pluto conjunction in Capricorn, which happens this month on the 22nd, was the world financial system. Because as you know, Saturn and Capricorn are synonymous with finances, banking, the world financial system. Pluto is all about destruction, renewal. So I was thinking, what's going to happen to really shake up the whole banking and international financial sector? Plus, we have Uranus in Taurus, the sign of money. What does this mean for the money supply, for the dollar? I mentioned that will this period of the next 7 years after this conjunction and while Uranus is in Taurus see the end of the dollar as the reserve currency. So on the theme of all this, I thought it was interesting to look at the gold price. I found a really good article by Brendan Smith. It was actually on InfoWars. There are some things I agree with, some things I don't, but it's definitely something interesting to look at. So if you don't mind, I'll be referring to it. So gold has seen an impressive spike in the past 18 months, said in this article. So historic gold rallies. Why? There's certain factors that the mainstream media ignore. So the media generally put a gold rally down to focus on stimulus means by the Federal Reserve as the cause. So they think maybe too much fiscal stimulus causes the gold price to go up. However, the most recent upward trend in gold, which has been happening since last year, but it started before that, actually started when the Fed was tightening liquidity and raising interest rates, not stimulating. So that goes against the received wisdom about why gold goes up. Also, a lot of analysts say that investment in gold is to absorb investment cash flows when equities are sliding, and yet stocks have been rallying since Trump came into power. The stock market's done really well and gold prices have gone up. So it's not because there's a downturn in stocks. So what's missing? So just as gold is not necessarily an inflation hedge, it's also a crisis hedge. So as economic and global political uncertainty grows, gold prices tend to skyrocket. I think, yes, there is a lot of uncertainty at the moment, so that could definitely be at the heart of it. So there are also signals that tell us that the central banks around the world are preparing for an event that they either cannot quantify yet or simply refuse to warn the public about. And that's evident in the acceleration in gold stockpiling, which is happening by banking institutions. So in 2018, foreign central banks bought levels of gold that haven't been seen since 2010. And in 2019, according to third quarter figures, banks bought even more, 12% more than in 2018. So last year, central banks purchased at least 550 tons of gold, and it looks like they don't plan to stop anytime soon. So leading buyers are Russia, China, and Turkey, with those first two, Russia and China, being the leading buyers for several years now. And central banks aren't just buying gold, they're also demanding their gold storage be transferred away from offshore holdings and back to their own countries. Now, I haven't actually watched Mike Rivero on what really happened, but it used to be a good channel I tuned into. And I know when I was listening to him a lot in 2016, he was talking then about gold stockpiling and also about the fact that countries like Germany were having their gold brought back to them. He had some interesting theories about that. I'm not endorsing his theories, but he said that when Germany recalled some of their gold bars from America, from wherever they were, Fort Knox, I guess, they were being kept, I don't know. He said that when the weights weren't consistent with the weights of bars of gold, and they drilled down into them and they found there was lead inside, so they were had been replaced by substandard, or we could fake gold bars. Now, I'm not sure if he's correct or if this is a conspiracy theory, but I just thought I'd put it out there. So, for example, Germany repatriated $31 billion worth of gold from Paris and New York vaults. Turkey's repatriated 220 tons from the Federal Reserve. Netherlands, 122 tons. Poland, 100 tons of gold from vaults in England. Hungary and Romania have announced plans to do the same. And Italy's gold reserves are going to be released by the banks and returned to public control, they say. So the bottom line is there's a gold rush on by the central banks as well as governments. And the public's being left out of the loop. But if we watch this, I mean, it's clear that there's something going on. So do they know that we're about to hit a global crisis? And they're gearing up for this? I mean, gold is always the one committed commodity that goes up when the shit hits the fan, right? So what are they expecting? Are they expecting a monetary crisis with the US dollar being at the center of that? Because economic crises don't always happen in a vacuum. There's usually an underlining political or geopolitical crisis that's going on. Now, what this article says is that often these collapse of financial bubbles are the threats are engineered to coincide with the bubble collapse so that they can obscure the true culprits. So they would maybe engineer a geopolitical event and say, oh, well, that triggered the financial crisis, when they knew kind of the financial crisis was going to happen anyway, but they want a scapegoat for it. One way or another, this article says, central banks are privy to a looming calamity that will be a threat to the current monetary order, totally consistent with Saturn Pluto conjunction in Capricorn and Uranus moving into Taurus. Pluto destroys. We're looking to something that's going to shake our whole concept of the world financial system, money, everything. So this article thinks that a geopolitical conflict will be the smokescreen or scapegoat, and so we'll have the conflict first and then the collapse. But I think it always goes the other way. As Mike Rivero often used to say on his show as well, every financial crisis or financial meltdown is preceded or followed, should I say, not preceded, is followed by a war. It's usually they use the war to help them recover from the financial crisis. So I think this article's got it the wrong way around. It's the financial crisis that'll come first, and then either conflict, wars, geopolitical strife, and crises. There's also a growing rift between America and the other major trading partners, as we see the trade war with China, and increased risk from Iran, although I think that could be actually minimizing. But this article thinks that we'll end up with a loss of the dollar as the world's reserve status. Now, what that's going to do is damage the American economy, cause massive inflation going back there, and it'll leave the American economy in shambles for decades, as it says here. And it will lead to, will it ever recover? And do they want it never to recover? Frankly, do the central banks want the American economy to recover from the impact of the loss of a dollar's reserve currency? I mean, if central banks want to save this current system, they say, why won't they tell the public why they've been stockpiling gold and what the specific threat is that they are kind of guarding it or hedging against? Now, in China, they've been advising individuals to stock up on gold and silver as well, but they're not telling us anything like that, are they? It's very hush-hush. We're getting no general guidance on this. As far as the UK stockpiling gold, no news on that. I don't know if we're even doing it. As we know, Gordon Brown sold off all our gold at rock-bottom prices, or most of it, should I say. So what it goes on to say is the banking elites need a crisis to consolidate power. They don't lose power or financial influence during a fiscal panic. They gain power. So the whole boom and bust, every time that cycle goes around, the elites consolidate power. With each passing financial demolition, the public loses more and more hard assets, and those assets are gobbled up and devoured, as it says here, by financial institutions. Not because they have so much use for this property, but because they don't want you to have it. So this all plays in to this, what Jeremy Corbyn's brother, Piers Corbyn, said about the climate crisis. It's all a redistribution of wealth upwards. And what I said in the Vulcanist agenda, it's this consolidation of power and wiping out of the middle class so that we again have the elites, then this massive gap between everyone else for the hoi polloi with no ladder up, which I see as the way we're going. That's in Why Capitalists Love Communism, if you're interested. So once private property is gone, public survival depends on the charity of the state. So it does make us more dependent, creates more dependency, it destroys wealth. They consolidate power. We're more dependent on the state. More power for the state, isn't it? So during any major crisis, it says here, there's always a window of time in which precious metals can be used to secure hard necessities while countering the loss of buying power during massive inflation or stagflation. And the longer one can remain solvent during any ongoing crisis, the more influence you'll have at the end of that crisis. So the levels of central bank gold buying have increased rapidly in the past 2 years, which suggests that what they're all preparing for is about to occur very soon. So we know that we have consumer debt at all-time highs, both in China and in the West, corporate debt at all-time highs, government debt in America at massive highs. So the recent liquidity crisis and the repossession loan market response with the Fed, along with highly volatile tensions between US and maybe China as well, then I don't think we can make it through 2020, says this article, without a shock to the system. So the Fed are decidedly unprepared, they say, and there's not much concrete proof that our gold reserves even exist, our referring to America. And I know that Mike Rivera was also extremely skeptical, and he said Trump needs to have an audit of Fort Knox or the Federal Reserve to actually quantify how many of the US gold reserves are there, because there's a lot of speculation that all this gold that countries think they hold, like I mentioned about Germany, isn't even there, or that it's already been sold off. Something's been going on with this gold. It doesn't actually exist. And when people actually go to count it, they're going to find it's either not there or it's not gold, like I suggested with Germany. Although, as I say, I cannot say that's true, but I'm putting it out there. So do the gold reserves exist? This is going to be interesting. And I do know there was talk of Trump having that audit. So, looking at the bigger picture, the shifting gold holdings around the world shows us where the global elites plan to stash their cash while the US takes a nosedive. So it's the elites are going to move their money to where the gold is: China, Russia, and Turkey. So let's watch Turkey for an increase in power there. So the overall trend for precious metals will be on the up from here on out, according to this article. So unless you see central banks suddenly dumping their gold reserves instead of buying, then definitely they suggest you copy their strategy and buy gold. Well, I suggest that there's not too many people out there who can actively do that. But I thought that was an interesting article. And yes, well, very interesting. I know that I have a subscriber called Paul, and he's been saying to me, what do you think of the gold price? It's going up and up. And yeah, so I definitely thought I'd introduce that. That signals to me that the people in the know are expecting a meltdown, and where better to secure your money than in gold. So let's watch out for what could possibly happen to the world finances, to the dollar, because Saturn Pluto conjunction in Capricorn and Uranus in Taurus indicates there could be great surprises and unprecedented shifts to come. Because when we're looking back at Saturn Pluto that happened, the conjunction in Capricorn back 500 years ago in the time of Martin Luther and the English Reformation and whatnot, we can't judge the effect on the economy then, because it was a totally different economy. The linkages were different. The systems were different. Obviously, it was prehistoric compared to now. But yeah, let's get ready for that. I think our focus is so on Brexit that sometimes we forget there's a whole bigger picture going on. So again, if you're a newish subscriber, I'm going to leave a link to my previous vlogs on Saturn Pluto in the description box when I'm finished this live. Please do check them out. I promise you'll enjoy them. They were quality, and also a better picture because I wasn't doing them live. I had my proper camera, so it looked all professional. Okay, guys, thanks for that. I hope you enjoyed it.